Welcome to Triptych.
Three friends having a chat
about three artistic masterpieces.
Making connections for modern life. Welcome to episode 3 of season 2. How amazing. It keeps going. Our opening question this week is what album saved your life? And you can interpret that how you will. So, Joel, should we start with you?
First of all, we're revealing our relative ages because who talks about albums anymore? It's just all singles. So, but I've always loved the album just as a piece of art on its own. Just not just individual songs, but the album itself. The album, that's probably the reason I started writing songs and kind of just found me at a time when I really just... at a formative time was Rich Mullins' Winds of Heaven, Stuff of Earth. And like you look back now and it's so 80s, the production, just everything. I do have a soft spot for the 80s, as bizarre a time as it was. Yeah, I think especially as a believer, that album trying to introduce me to a new way of thinking and writing and processing life and faith. And I think that's just stayed with me since. And not just in songwriting, but just as a person, just kind of realizing, oh, wait a minute, it's not all the phrases and the lingo and the cliches, but you can really wrestle with life.
Well, Joel, I mean, we came of age in the 80s, didn't we? It was the making of us.
Yes, it was the formative time. And again, it's just a weird time to say that was my formative time. I think it says a lot about you.
Let's move swiftly on, right? I'm moving on to Sophie now.
Okay, the album that saved my life. That's a tricky one. I am going to go with a classical album.
Ooh.
In piece of classical music. So I would say it's a CD with Marla 5 on it. It was because Marla 5 had such a special place for me because I grew up rural, deepest, darkest Wales. And because I was good at the violin, I got to go to Prague on a tour when I was 17 with youth orchestra. And it just opened my eyes getting to play that kind of music in a beautiful surrounding. And I was just like, I knew it. I knew there was more.
There's more to the Welsh fields.
Yeah, I was like, I knew it. And then as an adult, when I went through a particularly bad time of mental health, where I ended up having to kind of go back and live with my parents for a little bit, I basically lived under a blanket for 2 weeks, but I listened to that album on repeat, and it just kept.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. The melancholy of the first movement spoke to me, but also just the beauty and the transcendence of it. It just, it did good things to my soul as I just kind of lay there in a depressed stupor. So yeah, Marla 5.
You and a whole symphony orchestra under the blanket.
Yeah. It was a tight squeeze.
Yes, mine boggles. That's great. I love that piece. But I'm not quite as classy as you or as holy as Joel. So my album, I would say it really did save me in different ways, is an album by Peter Gabriel,
Nice.
simply called So. His albums have rubbish names. They're usually just his name, which is just hopeless. But the album called So came out in 86. And I'm one of those weirdos that went to boarding school for 10 years of my upbringing. And I think my teenage years were not the greatest. So I was 16 when this album came out. I was not doing well, but various songs on that album, I think of it as a whole. It's just an amazing piece of work, and there's so much there, but it's just very human and empathetic. I still love it. I've never grown out of it. So Peter Gabriel's a real musical hero for me. We're going to kick off this episode with an episode from the TV series The Crown, which is Peter Morgan's magnum opus. He's been prolific. He's a playwright. He wrote the movie that Helen Mirren starred in as the Queen, which is all about how the Buckingham Palace responded when Princess Diana was killed. And he obviously couldn't quite leave the subject alone, even though he is a self-confessed Republican. But he finds the whole notion of monarchy just extraordinary, which it is. So he's written this massive TV extravaganza called The Crown. And many of you will be aware there are 2 seasons in each sort of the 3 sections. And they change the cast every 2 seasons. The episode we're focused on is called Assassins. It's episode 9 of season 1, when Claire Foy is playing the Queen and Matt Smith is Prince Philip. But in particular, it's got John Lithgow as Churchill and Harriet Walter as Clemmy, his wife. And it's particularly because of them that I think this episode is a standout. But actually, there isn't a flawed performance in the whole thing. I don't know about you guys, but I found that the first season was amazing of The Crown. Just the quality, the writing, the production values were just stratospheric. And it's gradually gone downhill, I felt. And I gave up in season 3. It just became tabloidy and just a bit gross. I guess partly also because it's closer and closer to the current to now, and many of the people are still alive. So that's all quite weird. Leave that aside. It's a remarkable episode. The acting is just astonishing. And, John Lithgow is a tall, strapping American actor of great experience, but he pulls off the sort of rather declining, decrepit, stooping Churchill who is losing his faculties. He knows that he's fading, but he's still prime minister. He's prime minister for the second time, and he's dreading the moment of retirement. And it all surrounds a portrait being painted for his 80th birthday. And it's just so poignant. I think there's so much here about old age and our mortality, and the fact that you've had someone in church, obviously controversial in some ways. Not everything he did was great, quite the reverse. But somebody who's had the most extraordinary life, achieving extraordinary things, getting to the end of it where he's nowhere near as capable as he once was. And everybody can see it. That's one of the agonies of it. I wonder how it struck either of you.
I mean, true confession, this was my first episode of The Crown. I don't know if it's coming from the colonies, but I have no particular fascination with the royal family.
That's absolutely allowed.
I'm glad. We've talked about this before. I'm actually bemused by the fascination with the royal family. I'm just kind of like, the weddings and people lining up on the street. I'm like, what are you hoping to see? That's just a person, kind of thing. But this episode, I mean, it was gripping. It was weird. I said to my wife, okay, there's no quote unquote action in this episode of The Crown. Nobody's actually getting assassinated, which was kind of disappointing to me. Coming in, not knowing what this is about, but hearing assassins, I'm like, ooh, intrigue, spycraft. And there's none of that going on. Yes.
It's just an old man getting painted.
Right, yeah. Just like...
That's action.
Well, yes, slow brushstroke type action, but it was engrossing the whole way through. The acting, as you said, the performances were entirely believable. I mean, I love when I'm watching something and I actually believe I'm watching the Queen or I'm watching...
Right.
I'm aware that this is Lithgow, but I feel like I'm watching Churchill. The writing in terms of some of the lines were exquisite. There was so much depth and meaning in that. And yes, you're right. It was a fascinating portrayal of somebody who has been so powerful throughout his life, and you're watching the decline and how is he going to wrestle with that? There are people around him trying to help him. Is he going to receive that help? How is he going to go out? Kind of thing. And then also just the story running along with it, the relationship between the Queen and her husband and Porchy and her love for horses, and then you're watching kind of this the slow motion car wreck of their marriage, and the way they told that story, especially right towards the end when they cut back to the Range Rover and you see them arguing in the car,
yes,
and that sort of thing. I thought it was fascinating,
and I love the fact that we didn't eavesdrop on that argument.
Yes, yeah. I did too.
We just saw it was so heated, but it really felt to me like that's not my business.
Right.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a powerful way to do it. Yeah, I love this episode. It reminded me that The Crown was really, really, really good because that first series was phenomenal. And yeah, I also gave up on it in later series because it just felt trashy. And I was just like, ugh. Whereas first series, amazing. John Lithgow, of course, his expressive eyes. I mean, how much he says just with just the kind of like the shadow of emotion passing his eyes, especially when they're talking about the death of his daughter and the grief that his wife felt. And just the way his eyes are conveyed, it's just incredible to watch. It's very moving and very poignant. It also amuses me slightly because occasionally I hear Lord Farquaad from Shrek.
That was the perfect preparation, wasn't it?
So occasionally it takes me out and I'm like, Lord Farquaad, is that you?
Churchill, Lord Farquaad. Yes, of course. That makes complete sense.
And the gingerbread man who lives on Drury Lane.
Drury Lane. But, you know, that aside, John Lithgow is amazing. And I also think it's an interesting kind of take on the subjectivity of art as well and how that's used. Because, like, Churchill is obviously an incredibly intelligent man and he understands and kind of voices that, you know, the art is used in various ways. But nevertheless, it's like his own ego doesn't want him to his own portrayal to be anything less than like iconic statesman. You know, he can't bear being viewed as weak or old or aging out. But then the clash is that Sutherland, the painter, wants reality and truth above all. And it's that horrible clash of he sees the truth as an insult to him because he wants the myth, which is why the painting ends up getting burnt, which is actually 100% true, which is, yeah, fascinating.
If you Google it, there are sketches, so you can get a sense of what the original was like.
Yeah, I thought Stephen Delane did such a good job playing Sutherland, just with dignity and restraint. Yet that argument, it revealed, you know, what he was saying, the admiration he had for Churchill, and just, yeah, his the struggle with, you know, you can't see what I'm trying to do, and I really have paid you a compliment and painted what's real, and just again that battle with aging and the tragedy of aging that he wanted to portray, and Churchill would not have it, and yeah, it feels like such a loss that he burnt that portrait.
Yeah, and he sees it also like a personal affront to his very self, whereas Sutherland's like, it's not me you have an issue with, it's actually the reality of aging is what you're battling with.
And there's the death of the friendship in that moment that I thought was, again, so poignant, you know, that here's somebody who admires you, who you've had real deep conversation with, connecting on loss and life, and just a rejection of the portrait is a rejection of the friendship.
Which is why Delane, Sutherland, he just leaves quietly, doesn't he? He just has to back away. I mean, what I think is so interesting about, and you're right about their connection, it's their shared sense of grief about a child, but also the fact that Sutherland sees in Churchill's painting deeper reality. So there's that whole thing about the pond that Churchill had made in memoriam. And it's, you know, Churchill is oblivious. It's almost as if there's very little introspection. It's all about, you know, surveying the whole world and geopolitics and bestriding it. And so his painting is just depicting what he sees in a quite literal but effective way. But what Sutherland is doing is actually painting the reality beneath the superficial.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating. That's just the kind of nature of the relationship the whole way, that Sutherland sees things in Churchill that Churchill doesn't see himself, because, you know, even when Sutherland kind of points out that he's obsessively painted this pond over and over again, like Churchill seems to kind of barely have noticed that. It's like, well, yes, because the light's always changing.
Or he's not asked why. He's just done the fact of it, but not being curious enough to say, why would I do that?
Yes, whereas like Southern is able to like intuit that there's something, there's a grief there, and then he kind of makes the connection. And yeah, it's fascinating because again, it's just like seeing the reality underneath. Whereas like Churchill, even in himself, he kind of wants just the myth and the icon. He doesn't want to do the introspection and find the real.
So, I mean, the title Assassins is interesting. I wonder what you made of that.
Well, a big disappointment for Joel.
Because I had no idea what I was coming into, so I'm just like, where are the assassins? I'm deeply disappointed here. They're not hiding in the shadows anywhere.
Well, it's from when his wife says the word assassins in it,
right?
Because she's kind of saying, "Oh, he seems like a friendly chap when we first, and a fan of yours when they first meet." She's like, "So, I think we can trust him with the painting. I don't think he's going to be an assassin."
Right.
So, whereas actually they end up thinking he actually is an assassin of sorts because they can't bear the picture that he's made. So,
right. I mean, an assassin is the ultimate traitor, isn't it? Because they take a life, even perhaps when they've pretended to be a loyal friend. And I think that is the theme through all the main relationships in the show, because you've got the Queen and Prince Philip, and can they trust each other? Philip is out on the tiles every night, and the Queen is getting close to Porchy. So what's going on there? And then you've got Churchill and his relationship with Eden, which was famously fraught because, Eden was desperate to become prime minister, and he really thought it was his turn. Churchill is in his 70s when he becomes prime minister for the second time. He's had a stroke in office. That was in a previous episode. So, you think, come on, the time has come. And the thing is, Eden has been ill. That's where you see him coming back on a plane, supposedly recovered. And it's one of the things that will undermine him when he does become prime minister. But he's desperate for Churchill to hand over and feels betrayed. But Churchill likewise feels betrayed by Eden for not being loyal and just constantly looking to take him down. And then, of course, Sutherland and Churchill are very closely connected, but Churchill feels utterly betrayed by this portrait, even though in some ways he's doing him the honor of saying, this is the truth, and you can take this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to how we connect this to the others.
My masterpiece is Cold Comfort Farm, which is a comic novel by Stella Gibbons that was published in 1932. It's set between London and Sussex, but mostly at the title's namesake, Cold Comfort Farm, in Sussex. It is hilarious. I love this book because it's a parody of the kind of doom-laden rural melodramas of like Thomas Hardy. And so we follow the very pragmatic, brisk and infinitely sensible Flora Poste, who's 19. She's recently been orphaned and staying in London with a friend as she plans what she's going to do next. And she ends up in Sussex with her extended family, the Starkadder clan, at the very morosely named Cold Comfort Farm. And she has this desire to kind of sort them all out and dislodge them one by one from the melodramatic ruts that they each find themselves in. And that is where the comedy lies. We meet various unhinged family members and see their very earnest, dramatic melancholy bump up against Flora's kind of mildly interested, practical wisdom, which she just won't enter the drama. It's hilarious. And we get characters such as Adam Lambsbreath, who is the old farmhand.
He's about 300 years old, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And he mostly mutters local proverbs and proclamations of woe fairly unintelligibly to himself, and dotes upon his 4 cows, feckless, aimless, graceless and pointless. And every time we meet Yes. And every time we meet one of the cows, another one of them's lost a leg or a hoof. It's just really quite hilarious. And then we have like the grand matriarch of the farm who you don't meet until very late on, but she kind of casts a shadow, Aunt Ada Doom. And the most that we know about her really that is that when she was 2, she saw something nasty in the woodshed. And that kind of gets repeated, and all of her life's woes and problems are blamed upon that fact. When anything happens, it's like, well, she did see something nasty in the woodshed. And then my favourite character, who is Amos, and he is he owns the farm, but he refuses to hand it over to his son, and he spends most of his time preaching to the Church of the Quivering Brethren. And I feel like I recognise his character so well from my time in Wales, rural Wales, with Welsh Brethren-esque churches. It's very relatable.
Were they quivering?
They weren't quivering, no. But he largely tells them that they're miserable sinners. They're already damned, so there's no hope for them. And he delivers these like shouted one-liners such as, "There's no butter in hell." And it's really quite hysterical. And so Flora, for example, solves this dilemma by suggesting to Amos that perhaps he's actually sinning by not using his gift more widely and taking one of those nice new Ford vans and driving off to be an itinerant preacher, because surely that would spread the word. He suspects that Flora is, of course, a she-devil sent to tempt him. But on the other hand, he really does want one of those Ford vans. So off he goes and, leaves the farm to his son, who's able to modernize. And so we go. We have these moments where Flora manages to take each of them in hand and kind of sort everything out. It's hilarious. And also, I think it's good because Stella Gibbons doesn't just punch down at the rural folk in the farm. She also is really hitting at the kind of intellectual elites as well. The Bloomsbury set she ribs. She also kind of ribs like Flora herself for not really being capable of earning a living.
Mr. Mybug.
Mr. Mybug, the pseudo-intellectual who is hysterical. He just turns up. The first thing we hear him say is, "Do you believe that women have eternal souls, Flora?" And that's the first thing we hear from him. So I feel like it was really ahead of its time with its comedy, but also very of its time in its kind of modernist thinking that most human problems can be overcome with rationality and creativity. But what did you guys make of it?
I felt like I was going through a similar experience as I did with Local Hero. Like I was, Mark's moving, like I was entering a world I had never entered. And I'm like, okay, I'm struggling here because I'm not familiar with the source material. So I recognize, okay, this is a satire, but it's a little hard when you're seeing a satire of something that you've never experienced, but it was brilliantly written. I felt like you're settling in, getting to know the characters, and then the pace starts to pick up with Elphine and Flora's scheme there, and you're just watching this unfold. And I wasn't sure where the author was going, because I was wondering if Flora would be frustrated in her plans to save this family from their own selves, But then you're watching everything she tries works, and you're like, what is going on? How is this even working? But the characters were well formed. I was surprised at the story arc with Aunt Ada Doom.
Yes.
And just where that went and just how that resolved. And you're like, what is going on? You just this.
Yes. There's so much mystery that we're not let in on, isn't there?
I love the fact that they didn't let us in on the mystery, or just in terms of what are my rights, and and did the goat die? You're like, what is going on?
Yes, there's so many half conversations. We're like, what?
Yeah, it felt like she set up avenues that she didn't go down, and it made the story about something you didn't expect it to be about. And the whole time through, I'm like trying to figure out, should I like Flora? Should I dislike Flora? I mean, come on. Everything she thinks is right. She guesses the names of the relatives completely correctly. And you're like, she has this omniscience that you're like, come on, that's not even reasonable. But then you realize, okay, this is a satire. So yeah, it was fascinating. But as I say, I struggle in some ways because I'm like, okay, all right, what is she poking fun at here? I've never read these kind of novels set in this rural setting. She's clearly going after,
I think, Joel, you're going to have to get us reading a book that is out of our comfort zone and is part of the sort of Caribbean context so we can feel your pain. But I hadn't read it. I'd heard about it, but for whatever reason, never got around to it. But I loved it. I haven't read a lot of those sort of rural sagas. Thomas Hardy is obviously lurking in the background. Someone I was talking to said that actually there's the book Lark Rise to Candleford that is the real target.
Okay.
Which is full of sort of melodrama and stuff, but resolution as well. Whereas Hardy is really depressing and everything goes wrong.
Oh yeah, Hardy is so depressing.
Yeah, so this is the kind of antithesis of that. But I think I found myself laughing out loud so often. Just the turns of phrase, the names,
Yes.
and there'd be little sort of cameos about, I don't know, like. One of the sons, Stargadder sons, just loves the movies.
Yes.
And, the description of different movie types. And then just really stupid things like a play in London at the Pitt Theatre in Stench Street, 7 Dials, to see a new play by Brant Slurb called Manalalaevo. It's a neo-expressionist attempt to give dramatic form to the mental reactions of a man employed as a waiter in a restaurant who dreams that he is the double of another man who's employed as a steward on a liner. What's going on?
Was that the one with 60 scenes?
Yes.
One character and 60 scenes,
I think this is why I love it, because it just really appeals to the absurd in me.
Right.
And just like the caricatures. I mean, like again, like the character of Seth, who is like the caricature of the oversexed farm boy. The fact that every time we see him, he's got yet another button undone on his shirt. It's just so much. It's just so funny to me.
Her turns of phrase were exquisite. And then just these layered sentences that you're like, what are you doing? Just like... So yeah, they were definitely laugh out loud moments for me.
So this is Flora in the kitchen. She found a loaf and some butter, but no jam, of course, or anything effeminate of that sort. So what's effeminate about jam?
There was one about where she talked about just kind of being reserved in approaching her next statement, like a photographer approaching a pride of 18 lions. Just like...
Absolutely.
Or here's one of my favourites. She's as wild and shy as a Pharisee of the woods. And I'm sort of saying, okay, so...
Was that Adam Lamb's breath?
Yes. How does that
Yes,
even
of course.
work? But anyway,
Totally. And I also just think so many of its side characters are just so amused. They're given real personality. Just like even in the opening, we have Mrs. Smiling, who is like, she rarely appears, but we get such great information about her. The fact that she has a huge collection of brassieres, and and she writes the sentence, "It is hoped that when she dies, this collection will be left to the nation." And again, for something in 1932, it just feels really boundary pushing and hilarious to be joking about bras like that. Just hysterical. And the fact that there's no gloom or like emotional distress that she couldn't be taken out of by somebody saying, Mary, I think there's a really interesting new brassiere that you'd like to see. And this instantly rouses her from any depression.
oh, absolutely.
I really enjoyed it. What did you think about the fact that it is very modernist in the sense that everything can be overcome with rational thinking? Like, because Flora's kind of annoying like that, right? I mean,
well, you don't want her in your life, do you?
No. No, you do not want her.
I mean, even the storyline that just the way it resolves with Aunt Judith was like, what? Just what? You just took her into London and kind of set up an appointment with this psychoanalyst, and he convinces her to go off
and study old European churches.
Right, yes.
Yes.
It's just like, I mean, it does feel like she's also poking fun at that idea that we can just walk into situations and wave a wand and solve everybody's problems just by, it's as simple as this.
My sister gave me this book when I was about 17. I think she thought I needed some strong, brisk female role models in my life.
Isn't that what she is?
She absolutely is. That
so is
strong,
it saying
brisk...
now you understand me?
Yeah, I think so. And I think she was very concerned for me because, you know,
Yes.
this was a time where I was very much taking part in the Church of the Quivering Brethren. So,
Oh, wow.
so I think she kind of saw me as she was a Flora Poste in my life.
It's a very good prescription. So do you now have a Ford van?
I do have a Ford Fiesta. I don't know if that counts. So yeah, she instilled upon me that this was a role model I needed to follow, and because she could see I was a rather intense melodramatic soul, and so she wanted to instill a little bit of that kind of slightly detached pragmatism in me.
My masterpiece this time around is God Says Nothing Back by the Wallflowers. The Wallflowers are kind of famously fronted by Jacob Dylan, Bob Dylan's son, which of course is just a part of the whole the story of the band and Jacob's life, because to become a singer as the son of Bob Dylan, you know, he talks about the fact that early in his songwriting, he was trying to not reveal too much of his inner life because he felt like there was a kind of voyeurism where people wanted to or were interested because of who he was rather than because of what he was producing. This particular song is from an album in 2005 called Rebel Sweetheart. Apparently it's not Rebel Sweetheart, it's Rebel. I learned that as I was just kind of working on the background of the album. And it's apparently, reviewers have said it, the kind of middle songs, this one and another one, they don't feel like the tone of the whole album, because the tone of the rest of the album is quite upbeat and optimistic. And then you get to a song like this.
Through the morning silver frosted glow, oh, God says nothing back, but I told you so. I told you so.
It is an acoustic-driven song. You hear timpanis and very particular percussion driving it. It's atmospheric at times. You get some synths and some pads, and then the band brings a lot of background vocals that add to that feel. It certainly is. Yeah, I've been trying to find the right adjectives. There is melancholy there. There is introspection. It's plaintive in some ways. It doesn't feel hopeless, but it does have a heaviness to it as he's wrestling with some deeper themes. The structure of the song is verse-refrain. It's just a verse with a refrain. So there's no chorus, and there are 4 verses as he goes through. And he's tackling, you realize, you know, the title seems to focus you on God. But as the song progresses, he's really talking about God and time and love and death. Those 4 themes he's wrestling with. Lyrically, I mean, you know, it's weird. Sometimes you realize you have to listen to a song a lot of times to begin to access the images. So I feel like in some ways I'm still kind of reaching for some of his ideas. But there are lines which definitely hit you. In his second verse, he says, God bless the void of my daydreams. Head back in the snow, making angel wings. As slow motion dancing lights at dawn sail beneath a burning yellow sun. I'm calling out from the deep ends of my bones. Time says nothing back, but I told you so. I told you so. And just that line, I'm calling out from the deep ends of my bones. You know, you recognize the depth of what he's working through. That metaphor that carries just the fact that, okay, this is some deep introspection and a reaching for meaning and a struggling to understand this experience of life. He's done a few interviews around this. He did an interview with NPR about this album. The interviewer was a lady by the name of Melissa Block. And she says, oh, let's talk about the song, God Says Nothing Back. And Dylan's reply is, it's true. It's true. He just doesn't say anything. Block says he's very quiet, and he agrees he's very quiet. And he talks about the fact that, you know, most of the bigger questions or concerns, at least that I have, seem to be encompassed by these 4 words: God, time, love, and death, one way or another. Every question seems to go back to one of those topics. Apparently, this is one of the songs he's proudest of in terms of the work he's produced. So he really feels like, you know, and I get that as a songwriter. Sometimes you're working through material, but there's this one song you're trying to write, almost for your whole career, and you're trying to capture just your wrestling with some of the deeper things that affect you. And it seems like this is that one song for him. So I don't know what you guys made of it.
I mean, I've loved this song for years, just from the sound of it. Before I really listened to what was going on lyrically, it's just a very beautiful, yes, melancholic, but gorgeous song. And I find it very moving, and I can't quite pinpoint why. But that becomes all the richer when you start thinking about the lyrics, and I love that pattern you brought out in the refrains. That I think is really fascinating. And to begin with, you think this is a kind of declaration of doubt and unbelief, but it occurred to me that if there is a narrative behind it, it speaks of a bereavement and just processing the different angles of what it means to have lost someone who was loved. And nothing can change the fact of that loss, that the big gap that is left in your life. And quite what one does with that is anybody's guess after this, but it struck me as this is articulating being in the midst of that without any sense of a way through or out.
I noted down that going through the lyrics that it kind of reads like a modern psalm, in the sense it's kind of asking, where is God when wicked men prosper, kind of thing. It's that kind of, it does feel like a lament, looking for some kind of semblance of meaning or answers in things which just seem unescapable and unfathomable. Because God, time, love, death, those are things which are all kind of intangible but unescapable. They're all just present, but so difficult for the human mind to fathom. And it feels, I don't know, it felt very apt to me at the moment with the horror of the world right now. I've been feeling just slightly helpless and overwhelmed at the kind of in the face of all that's been going on with, whether it's continuing aggression against Ukraine, or we're talking about the Epstein files or the ICE murders, or, all of these things are just pulling back even further the total depravity and horror that we live amongst. And you're kind of, I feel like it's saying what all of us feel, which is, where is God when this is happening? And I don't think that's a statement of doubt. I think the fact that one is asking those questions, means a good deal, because we have to wrestle with them. I also massively appreciated the fact that it had a timpani in it as well.
I thought you might.
Yes. I mean, I haven't heard one used to such great effect since Magic by Ben Folds 5. So
I felt like he's wrestling with the opaqueness of life, and wanting to find meaning, wanting to make connections, and especially just those themes are so much like Ecclesiastes, in the scriptures. Just
they're the big themes.
Yeah, they're the big themes that affect all of our lives, but we can't see beyond what's right in front of us. And then that refrain, "I told you so," there's a mocking sense to it. You always hear "I told you so" after the fact, after you've lived, after you've struggled, after you've had these experiences, and it's like, yeah, well, I told you so.
I love that precisely. Yeah.
Yes, I find it interesting just how he has tried to capture that struggle that I think we all feel, where we want to see more than we can see, and we want to understand what's happening. And we are reaching for love, and we are living in time, and it's running away from us. It feels like it's running away from us, and the inevitability of death. And yeah, some of those lines in that fourth verse are particularly exquisite. "Open up these graves, let these bodies talk. Buried on the leaves, blood red and gold. Death says nothing back, but I told you so. I told you so." It's almost like I'm trying to go back to understand, in the losses I've had, can I see through? And yeah, what was this about? And death says nothing back.
The way the refrain imagines almost a conversation with someone who's been offering platitudes. So somebody's, obviously been saying, it's going to be okay, or, he'll speak eventually, or, this will all make sense. The songwriter, the sort of persona is saying, no, it didn't happen. And I told you it wasn't going to happen. I knew it was going to be like this. Don't give me that sort of shallow rubbish. I think all of us have been on the receiving end of, that kind of shallow rubbish,
Yes.
for want of a ruder phrase. And it's a relief almost to have that sense articulated in a song like this, and for it to be so stunningly gorgeous as a song.
I mean, as a kind of a person who kind of has that melancholic streak to me, I really resonated with some of the imagery in it. I think it's verse 3, where it's talking about the still waters rising in my mind. And I just thought, again, that's such a amazing use, because a lot of people would turn to kind of turbulent waters to describe this, but it's not. It's, we know that still waters are the most dangerous. That's the breeding ground for all sorts of parasites, bacteria. Still water's dangerous. And, and we kind of often, put these things down to like turbulence, but it's like, no, it's stillness in the mind is this breeding ground, because you're understanding and seeing the depth of what is happening. You're kind of actually fathoming a sense of how big this is, how deep this is, this life that we're living. And it's really hard to kind of cope with when you don't know how to make sense of it all.
Well, we've got 3 genuinely different things this time. And I think we're all slightly nervous to what's going to happen, but we've got a satirical novel. We've got a very dramatic and tense and beautifully acted drama, and we've got a melancholy, beautiful song. So what on earth is going to tie all that together?
Well, this exercise might prove that we shouldn't be so random in matching things. We'll see where this goes.
There's a first time for everything. How about this as a starter? Silence is quite an interesting thing, and unspoken feelings and responses. So that's obviously going on in The Crown, where one of the things about particularly Claire Foy's performances of the Queen is how much is not said. And that's one of the weirdest things, and at the same time most impressive things about the Queen, is that nobody actually ever really knew what she was thinking. So it's all held back. And one was sort of trying to sort of navigate what that might mean. And at the moments, it's interesting in that episode where she does have very strong views. We are not privy to it. So they're having the really tough argument in the car. And obviously that chimes with the Jake Dylan song and the one-sidedness, if you like, of the conversation we are in times of grief and difficulty. And then actually Flora Poste arrives at a farm where nobody's been talking about anything. So it's almost, she has to come sort of to crack open the ice and get people to, and we still by the end don't know what the something nasty in the woodshed was. It's just nasty.
Yeah. I was thinking that there is an element of mystery in the silence that is found in life. That Flora we don't know if she finds out what the nasty thing in the woodshed is. She just certainly doesn't seem to know what her rights are at the end, which she goes to the farm to find out what she's, supposed to be given.
Even after talking to Aunt Ada for 9 hours.
Yes, she's been talking to her, and all we get really is, and did the goat die?
Right. Which was brilliant. I just thought, again, sorry, that was so brilliant. You're like, what? How could you get me through a whole book and then do that to me?
I mean, it feels like it's a good comic trope. It's something that's been carried on even in like Gavin and Stacey, if you've ever watched that. No one ever knows what happened on the fishing trip between Jason and Uncle Bryn. That's an ongoing joke. That something terrible happened, but no one will ever talk about it. And that's where the comedy lies. So it's interesting seeing that that's a kind of a comic approach, but still kind of dealing with the fact that there are unspoken things in our lives, some things that we never know or cannot know. And that does show up in the song with, grappling against kind of the silence of death, the silence of time, the silence of God. There's things that we can't know, and that's kind of a more melancholic take.
I can't help but contrast the neatness of Cold Comfort Farm. Just in terms of the satire. I mean, you know it's satire. You know, this isn't... She's poking fun at, as you said, modernism and, I can solve everybody's problems, you know, with the complexity of the other two pieces of art. And they aren't neat. The edges aren't well defined. You're watching relationships that are messy and struggles that people do not in the end grasp. Churchill in the end is not able to grasp his own experience of time and just death coming towards him in aging. And you're hearing Dylan wrestle with that, and just I'm not hearing what I need to hear. I'm not finding what I want to find as I walk through these experiences. But the satire now stands out because it's like, but it's as simple as, if we're just rational, if we just come up with a scheme, a plan, if we just point people in the right direction, then Cold Comfort Farm becomes this wonderful sunny place, and everyone is suddenly relating and happy and just enjoying their lives because we just got everyone moving in the right direction and unknotted the conundrums,
Yeah, I was thinking kind of the link of how people face up to reality or don't, and how they're grappling with it. When Churchill is kind of faced with the reality of the painting, and Sutherland is kind of saying, it's not me you're arguing with, it's the reality of death, but decay. But Churchill is kind of insistent that it's actually, the painting is the affront, and it's that difficulty in actually dealing with the bluntness of what's being said.
I mean, to be fair to Churchill, there's the ceremonial element of it. It's this big event in Parliament, his 80th birthday, a presentation thing as a kind of recognition of all that he's done for the country. And the Queen actually says that to him when he has his last audience. And so I think he was perfectly legitimate in expecting something kind of ceremonial and grand. And there are paintings like that of him, as indeed there are of others. I guess Sutherland was too good an artist and too honest an artist to just produce the sort of propagandistic, formulaic, here's Churchill in his garter robes type thing. This is his Churchill at the end of his life. And even a great man like him comes to this. It's kind of Ozymandias in a way.
Yes. So coming back to the painting, I mean, it's clear that Sutherland saw something meaningful and worth saying in portraying Churchill as this 80-year-old man who is aging and is not at the peak of his powers. And Churchill just could not see it. He didn't want to be portrayed that way. And you're watching him wrestle with his own experience of time and the encroachment of death on his life and his strength waning. It becomes this poignant moment, which of course is captured now in the burning of the painting. Churchill refuses the portrayal of that reality. He doesn't want that in his life.
But it's also Clemmy who wants it burnt as well, isn't it? She's seen observing it being destroyed.
But what was interesting, I was trying to interpret her facial expression, and it didn't seem like she was happy about it being destroyed. It felt like she was grieving a bit of a tragedy in seeing him wrestling with himself in that way. That's the kind of way I interpreted that moment. She was standing, she was watching.
Yes,
and it's like, okay, yes, something is gone, it's gone, kind of thing. But you kind of watch her come alongside him, trying to help him through this process. And when he finally says, "Look, I'm going to give up the post," she says, "Good," because it's clear that to her that he needs to do this. He should have done this. Just kind of interpreting her relationship with his struggles is interesting.
She's desperate for a bit of a life back. I mean, because basically their entire married life, he's been in the Commons and doing what he's been doing. I think one of the things that is particularly striking, and maybe this does run through certainly the novel and the TV show, because there's a big contrast being made by the end of life and the beginning. So, you know, the Queen was so young. She was in her early 20s when she becomes monarch. And the Prime Minister, her first Prime Minister, with whom she has a weekly audience, and they become close friends, and the Queen depends on him. The contrast between them is so great. And then when Churchill walks out at the end of his last audience, she's just left standing there in this great room of state or whatever. She looks so small and so young. She's kind of adrift. But the problem, I guess, for Churchill with rubbing in his decay is that it just adds fuel to the flames of Eden wanting to take over. And, you know, everybody's scrabbling around to get that top job. And then in the book, you know, this farm community is basically kind of frozen in life, not just temperature wise. That everything's completely static and stuck, and it's this 19-year-old who comes along and sorts it out, a bit like, you know, a new monarch, a new sheriff in town. I mean, it's absurd, obviously, but there's a real sense of, well, we need the dynamism of youth to really sort out this problem. It reminds me of at the end of Tony Blair being Prime Minister in the UK. He'd been in power for 10 years. David Cameron was leader of the opposition then. And he had this line. It was a devastating line. He said, "You were the future once.
Wow, yeah.
And now you're the past." And it's that's a sort of a painful truth about all politics, isn't it? And there's always other people wanting to take your place.
Interesting. And I think it's interesting the ways in which the different kind of methods are employed to get people to kind of grasp that reality. So like, I don't know, Sutherland kind of confronts Churchill, like, he doesn't mean to in that, he doesn't, but he does with the stark reality. You're aging, it's over, you know, this is the reality of it. And that kind of causes quite a lot of defense before Churchill then kind of starts to see he's right, even if the friendship's broken. But then you see Flora, she gets her outcomes, but she does so in a very kind of, she understands the ego a little better and how to flatter it. She's incredibly manipulative, really.
Is she a psychopath?
Maybe. She understands the psyche, so she doesn't come at it with stark reality. She can see what's going on, like the nonsense that's happening with like Amos refusing to hand over the farm to his son. But she's like, she can't just come out and be like, it's over, hand it over, don't be ridiculous.
And that's like Churchill and Eden, isn't it?
Yes, it's clearly time to hand over. So, but she kind of understands his psyche and how he thinks. And so she goes about it in a way to say, actually, don't you think it's more of the Lord's will for you to get a new Ford van and to go off? You know, so she's quite adept, I think. It's interesting how she manages to get the outcomes, not with kind of brutal reality, but with the kind of massaging of ego. That's kind of the issue with Churchill, is his ego is getting in the way.
It's ego, but also pain. The pain of it.
Well, yes. So I don't want to be harsh to poor Churchill.
Well, you can be, but
I found it fascinating that you're watching Flora Poste and these moments where things turn. You know, the moment where it turns with Reuben and he starts to see her as an ally. The contrast with what seems to turn Churchill is the conflict with Sutherland. And he's left to himself, and it's at that point he's like, I need to stop. You know, because he's been fighting this battle, and it's almost like he suddenly realizes, but they're right. I am declining. I haven't wanted to face this about myself, but here it is in that conflict. He's now like, okay, I'm done. I'm giving it up. And yeah, it's just interesting, just that aspect of, okay, here is the corner that has been turned for a character. And then you contrast that like with Ada Doom. It's such a bizarre corner for her character. After this insistence, almost a Churchill-like insistence that this must be under my thumb, I must maintain my rule over this. She's suddenly entranced by this vision, not of decline, but of all she could be at this age. And you know, and travel, and look at this woman and how she dresses and the adventures she has, and that all of a sudden lifts the gloom and that insistence on domination, and there's no more mention of the woodshed anymore. It's now,
Yeah.
I'm off in
Thank
a
goodness.
plane. And again, it's absurd as you look at it. You're like, no, that would never happen. How could that possibly happen? But it's just fascinating to see that idea of, oh, this character has just turned a corner in a significant way.
You sort of think, if it was that simple, why didn't anyone do this years ago?
Right. Yeah.
I was just looking at my notes from the TV show, though, and the dialogue with Churchill and Sutherland, the argument that they have is about the difference between accuracy and truth.
Right.
And that's really interesting. And I think that's actually really quite an important discussion about art in general, isn't it? Because in a way, what we've said about the book is that it's absurd and it could never happen. But even in the satire, there is some truth in this.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And the song is so well formed. It's perfectly proportioned. The refrain has a nice sort of rhythm to it, and the way each of the verses takes the theme of that verse and does something very concise and just sort of dabs of paint here. It's all it needs. It's so artful, and yet it just captures the mood so beautifully. It's a remarkable thing. But in a way, you'd say it's not accurate. None of these things are accurate, actually,
right?
But they're true.
I think you're right. If you think of Dylan's lyrics like brushstrokes, right at the start, seems like the world's gone underground, where no gods or heroes dare to go down. And you're like, okay, that's not accurate. Like, that's not describing the world in a literal sense. But yeah, you're right. He's able, with those unusual brushstrokes, to access a truth. That we feel this sense of loss. We're looking for something. We're looking for something transcendent, but we're not finding it right here in front of us. And just his imagery is so unusual. It's so there's so much unreality in terms of, okay, he's not painting the world as it is, but he's able to describe the world as it feels and as we experience it. And you're right. It's weird now when you're thinking about three different portrayals that are wrestling with reality, wrestling with truth in a certain way, but are doing it in entirely different ways.
Well, let's wrap things up there. I think that's been a really exciting and interesting discussion. I don't know if you've got last words, either of you?
Yeah, I mean, my last word would be just how fascinating artists are. I think what struck me through all three masterpieces was just a way with words, just a turn of phrase, a way of expressing things that they're all so different, yet also beautiful in the way they use words to convey meaning.
Yeah, and there isn't one art form that can really portray the fullness of human experience. It just, they're each taking, similar. Well, there are some, themes that run through, but they each kind of deliver such a different angle on them and a way of seeing it. So yeah, it is amazing.
Great. Well, I think it's going to be goodbye from Joel, isn't it?
It is goodbye from me.
And I think Sophie's probably going to say goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye from me.
And I'm going to say goodbye and say that actually next time we've got plans ahead of the game here. We're going to think about some sculptures. We're going to think about Godzilla. And we're going to think about Please God Find Me a Husband. So make of that what you will. All will be revealed next time. So goodbye. That was Triptych, hosted by me, Mark Mennell, with Joel Bain in Jamaica and Sophie Kiddingley in the UK, with tech and editorial expertise from Owen Feetham. Visit our website at triptychpod.com, that is triptychpod.com, for episode show notes, background information and various links. Please do get in touch with any questions, comments and even suggestions for future episodes. And if you've enjoyed this, please do share it around and rate us wherever you get your podcasts.